I've been in accounting firms of all sizes. I've been in all different kinds of corporations, and I feel like I suffocate inside of that environment. And it's okay to either feel that way or not feel that way. The important thing for everyone is to recognize who you are, and where you want to go, and which vehicle is going to be the best for you. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. This is the place where we inspire entrepreneurs to get to the next level. And we also inspire people that are thinking about opening up their own business to go ahead and get it done and explore the abundance that having a business creates, but also to be aware of what it takes to actually have a successful business. Today, we have with us Laura Stees. Laura, welcome to the show.
Welcome, David. As you know, I have a passion for being an entrepreneur, so I'm so excited about this conversation today.
I'm just as excited as you are. You are a fabulous entrepreneur, a brilliant mind, and you have done very well for yourself. And I cannot wait to share to the world all the wisdom that you have acquired among all these years of hard work, right?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Laura, for the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Yes, my name is Laura Stees. I am a CPA in San Diego, California, beautiful San Diego, California. And I know most people will say a CPA as an entrepreneur. Yeah, hold on. We'll talk about that some more.
Actually, you're right, but it's a misconception. A lot of multi-millionaire entrepreneurs that I know are CPAs. You have a great advantage. You know how to run accounting. You know what cash flow means. And you know that you need to stay in positive cash flow. You want to have a successful business. And just with those things, you have a huge advantage over other entrepreneurs like me, where, we thought that the balance sheet and the profit statement was everything. And then my bank account was empty.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about that. And people just don't think of CPAs as entrepreneurs because the typical personality of CPAs is that they're heavy data gatherers. And most of them don't have an entrepreneurial personality. David, you and I are both in strategic coach, so we're very familiar with the Kolbe profile. Mm-hmm. And in the Kolbe profile, there is a category called a quick start. And the higher you are in the quick start score, the more of an entrepreneur you are. And most CPAs are only on a 2 or 3 in a scale of 1 to 10. I happen to be a 9.
Wow.
So I'm a little different as a CPA.
That's fantastic. So let's unfold this. Let's go back in time. Why did you go into accounting school? So you were finishing high school, then what happened?
Well, it actually goes back even further. First of all, let me tell you about my family. My family has tremendous skills in high math. I have over 30 cousins that are accountants. Yes, 30. I come from an extremely large family. So, and those that aren't in areas like accounting, they're in things like computer programming, computer science, stock brokerage firms, financial advisors, even musicians, because music requires high math. So I just come from a family that has a propensity towards high math, and there are several accountants in the family. But for me, it goes back to when I was about 10 years old. I knew at 10 years old that I was going to be an entrepreneur. Now, that caused a lot of friction with my mom growing up, because I grew up in a traditional Catholic household. There are 10 children in my family. 7 of those are boys. My father was an entrepreneur, and my father always counseled, or as my brothers would say, lectured. He always counseled that you should be an entrepreneur. You should be in control of your own life. You should never be beholden to someone else's rules or someone else's fate. Be in control of yourself and your business. And he enjoyed having that freedom and flexibility. My mom, on the other side, didn't enjoy that. And because as you can imagine, as entrepreneurs, there's always stress of cash flow and seasonality and everything else. Those are the parts that I love about it, but you have those kinds of stresses. So my mom, on the flip side, did not like that all of those characteristics. And she preferred having a job in a place where she was getting a consistent paycheck. Now, she didn't work for most of my childhood. It wasn't until my youngest sister was a little bit older that she decided to work and took on one of those traditional jobs. So we had these conflicting things going on in the family, and I tended to follow what my dad said because that resonated with me. And like I said, at 10 years old, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. Now, David, you know what the funny thing is about all of that counseling or lectures that my father was doing? For my brothers, none of the messages were for me because I was supposed to get married and have children. That was the traditional Catholic way. None of my brothers became entrepreneurs.
Oh, wow.
None.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How about your sisters?
My sisters also went to work for other people and worked inside of corporate environments. Every time I'm in a corporate environment, I feel like I'm suffocating.
Yeah.
And I've tried it in so many different ways over the years. I've been in the Navy, which is the ultimate corporate environment. Mm-hmm. I've been in accounting firms of all sizes. I've been in all different kinds of corporations. And I feel like I suffocate inside of that environment. And it's okay to either feel that way or not feel that way. The important thing for everyone is to recognize who you are, where you are, and where you want to go, and which vehicle is going to be the best for you. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. I have cousins in accounting that they're corporate accountants. They cannot imagine being out there as an entrepreneur or running their own firm at all. They can't imagine doing it.
It's, it's the Rachel is about right, Laura. So, you were 10 siblings and one became an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur. That's kind of like the rule in the world, if you think about it. And being an entrepreneur is the hardest thing you can do in the world. But for me, it's also the most rewarding. And mm-hmm. we need people that want to work in jobs that we create, right? I keep saying that one of the reasons why I make this podcast is because I really want to inspire entrepreneurs to keep going and to reach the next levels, because the free world is based on small and medium-sized businesses. If we disappear as entrepreneurs, all that we have is slavery and dictatorship. So that's how fundamental it is. And in fact, I'm also against multinationals, not against, but I'm against monopolies. I don't mind multinationals, but if a company becomes too big and starts becoming a monopoly, then it's almost like a dictatorship too, isn't it? So that's why we have all those anti-monopoly laws, right?
Right. I see it as, for me, it is a place that stifles creativity. Mm-hmm. And so when a company gets so big that everything is about process and status and all of that, the creativity goes away. Yeah. And that's the part that I love, is being able to be creative. And also I like the ability to be able to change on a dime. Larger bureaucratic organizations, they can't change easily. Right. And we're seeing this right now. We're seeing companies fail because they made some of the wrong decisions and they portrayed themselves in ways in the public that the public didn't like. The public was able to change quickly and stop patronizing those businesses, but those businesses were not able to change in reaction to mm-hmm. the public.
Yeah, no, it's tremendous. So that's why my heart is with small and medium-sized businesses, and for people like small and medium-sized businesses from $100,000 to $1 billion. Like, there is, I used to call them big mid-sized businesses, because if you sell $1 billion, you're still a mid-sized business. That's
right.
kind of like the definition, right? But going back to your life, it must have been hard, because your dad was talking to your male siblings. Your mom was probably not encouraging you to have your own business. Like, how do you manage to step into your own company?
Well, the interesting thing about growing up with 7 brothers is, as a girl growing up with 7 brothers, I have the compassion and empathy of a woman, but I have the fearlessness of a man.
Mm-hmm. You have to defend yourself, right?
Yes. So, it's very interesting that I've always been strong-willed, and I've always been very confident in who I was, and just very laser focused, that I knew from a young age that this was what I was going to become. And everything that I did up to becoming an entrepreneur was to prepare me for being an entrepreneur. So all of the companies that I worked for, it was not just to learn skills that were positive skills, but it was also to observe what was going on in companies. And I love to observe people and companies. I observed what was going on in those companies, and I started setting some rules for myself of what I didn't want to become. Mm-hmm. And so I was watching some of the bad stuff, and instead of looking at it as this is something terrible and I'm a victim and blah, 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 I said, okay, that goes on my list of things I don't want to become. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that type of company.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So yeah, you actually had the corporate experience, and then you started collecting intelligence and knowledge on how, when you're ready to jump on your own, you will do it, right?
Right. And just kind of gathering that information. And again, it goes back to that concept of being a victim. I've never allowed myself to be a victim. When I was in my late 20s, I was in a car accident where 30% of my body was burned. And the day that my mind made the switch between being a burn victim and being a burn survivor was night and day for me. And it has been one of the strongest things that has given me resilience in the rest of my life. So you can look at trauma that happens to you, and you can wallow in it, and you can let it affect you negatively, and you can let it sidetrack you and control you. But I decided that trauma or negativity was not going to control me. And I've pretty much lived my life that way, of not letting those things ever take control of me.
It's so funny, because we were just talking with my wife about this morning. Reading a passage in the Bible that says that suffering ultimately creates resilience and character, and it makes you a better person, as long as you put it in the right positive way. Because if you become the victim, the problem by becoming the victim is that you never learn, because it's not your fault, or you had nothing to do with it. And even like in a car accident, you probably had nothing to do with it. But even with that, you create an empowered position in your life where you could actually take this to your advantage and grow out of it. And now, thanks to it, you're a stronger person, right?
Exactly. So, you can sit back and have a bad boss, and you can let it ruin your day, and you can let it ruin your career, and you can let it convince you that you're not worthy, but that's not serving anyone. And believe me, the boss that wasn't nice to you has no idea that any of this is sitting inside of your head. So, you just got to stand up, pull up your pants, and move on with your life. Like that one admiral, there's a YouTube video out there of this admiral that does this speech at this commencement ceremony or graduation ceremony or something. And he says, first thing you do every day is get up and make your bed, so that no matter what happens during the day, you have accomplished the task of making your bed. It's the first thing you did in the day, and it sets you up for success for the rest of the day. No matter what happens, you can come home at night to a bed that has been made. And when I listened to that speech, I was like, oh man, he's got the formula. He's got the right formula. Yeah. So no matter what happens in your business every day, You get up you go to bed every night in that made bed, and you know that you have achieved something, you have an accomplishment behind you, and you get up the next day and you start all over again. So one of the best pieces of advice that I can give to anyone who's an entrepreneur is to always, always, always have plan B.
Yeah.
Always be thinking about plan B, because there are a lot of times that plan A gets sidetracked. But when you can pivot to plan B, those sidetracks do not hold you down. They do not prevent you from moving forward. And you have, and you eliminate a lot of that angst.
You know what you're saying makes so much sense, and that's why I'm still successful. For me, being an entrepreneur is like playing a chess game where I have to anticipate the next five moves. So if I move my horse and it gets eaten by this other component in the game, I know I can move my queen around and try to go through the firewall, if you will, right?
Right.
So it's not only plan A, but plan A, B, C, and D sometimes,
Well, sometimes, yeah, you're right. Sometimes it is the A, B, C, and D. And I always say that you will find the answer by going over, under, around, or through. Sometimes you have to just go through whatever the challenge is, whatever the thing that's holding you back. But Cutco has this, teaches their salespeople this philosophy. And I heard this in an interview of someone who had some severe health issues. They had been in a major car accident, and he was able to use this philosophy. And the philosophy is, take 10 seconds to feel sorry for yourself, then put it aside and move on.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And I may not be paraphrasing it exactly, but that's the philosophy. When something goes wrong, take 10 seconds to feel it, feel sorry for yourself, and then move on.
Yeah. And it's such a good advice, because if you allow yourself to be self-pity for a long time, it's harder to get out of that mindset. Later, it's harder, and before you know, you're falling into depression, right? So It's almost like indulging for a little bit, have your set time and then get out. Come on. Dust yourself up and keep going.
Yeah. And I had to practice all of this yesterday. I had something go on in the office yesterday that kind of, took me for a surprise. And I said, oh, okay. I gave myself the time to think about it, analyze it, consult with, people that I mentor with. And by the end of that, I was done with it. I had my plan B in place. And today I'm acting on plan B.
It's beautiful. And life keeps going on. And if you know that the obstacle is the way and that problems make you better, then you'll see problems in a different way, right? Because honestly, when you're having success, it's fabulous. It feels amazing, but you learn very little. When you have a big problem and then you finally solve that problem, you really move to the next level, but with all this experience. So when I see entrepreneurs like you, when I see is, all the things that you were able to accomplish in your life, and it's the signs, it's like in military, you have your medals, right? And those medals are earned with a lot of scars in your back.
Yeah, grit and determination. Yeah, grit and determination for a lot of those medals. You're absolutely correct.
How long did you stay in corporate?
I had, probably about the first 10 years of my working life. And I started working when I was 16. Actually, I started when I was 15. I wasn't supposed to be working, but I was. You come from a large family, and we did okay, but there wasn't extras. So if you wanted extras, at 12 years old, I was babysitting or mowing lawns or doing stuff like that. And then at 15, I got my first job that I received a paycheck from. And I lied on my application. I acknowledge that. I told them I was 16, I was 15. And then at 17, I was in the Navy. So I spent 4 years in the Navy, got out of the Navy, and went to college after the Navy. Because the Navy was kind of a place where I said, is this, what direction do I really want to go? And I did something completely different than being in accounting when I was in the Navy. I was a gunner's mate. So I specialized in gun systems, but that was all electronics, and electronics is all high math. Mm-hmm. So again, it fit in with the same profile of the electronics. Realized that that was not a direction I wanted to go. Electronics just didn't hold my passion, and accounting still was holding my attention. So went to college right after the Navy, and then after college, well, even during college, I was working in corporate positions. I was working as a financial analyst in a multinational company while going to college. And then I went into a couple of accounting firms, the traditional accounting firms, realized, you know, what I hated about working for other people, especially back in those days, because you had to you really became a slave to the accounting firm because you had to do certain things in order to get your CPA license.
Right.
Today, it's a little different. It's easier for people to do it, but it's still, you know, it was something that I had to go through. And then, you know, opened my own firm fairly, not too much longer after that. But then at one point I merged with a very large firm out of Los Angeles and hated it.
Corporate again.
Hated it. That firm ended up being acquired by an IT consulting firm who wanted to use the accounting environment to catapult more of their IT services. So I was able to say to them, look, with the direction that you're going, we're a boutique office and we really don't fit with the direction. And they said, yeah, you're right. So I was able to amicably move away and come back into just being an entrepreneur. And so here I am, and that's where I'm going to end.
That's fantastic. And, you know, it's when, you know, our coach, right, Dan, teaches us that we need to have a business that is ready to be sold at any time, and you achieve that through who, not how, right? So you create your team around you. And I've met many entrepreneurs that they were able to sell their business, but usually when you sell a company, they give you the golden handcuffs, right, where they make the entrepreneur stay for a period of time until they vest the company out and they know that the company is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then they can get paid out at the end, the rest of the payment, whatever the terms are. And usually that time is hell on earth for the entrepreneur. Yeah. Because now you have a big corporation on top of your own business. You are completely handcuffed. You have to go and abide by these new rules and regulations, and the red tape comes and the politics comes. And you know, some of the guys that I met, they actually have bailed out in the middle, and I didn't care about the money anymore because it was so horrible.
Right, you know? right. And they just couldn't thrive in it. Exactly. You're absolutely correct. That does happen.
So it's, you know, I'm running my business like that. It's a self-managing company now. It's about 95% of my job is delegated now. But I really wonder if I will sell, if they will actually make me stay. You know,
right.
It wouldn't be easy for sure.
Now, for me, being that large company has not been a passion of mine. So while many of our cohorts in Strategic Coach have developed their companies into extremely large companies, I've chosen not to. I'm not interested in becoming a very large company, but I'm more interested in developing intellectual property. And so that has become my passion. And, you know, it just, we all find our own ways, don't we? And the main thing is finding out who you are and what really satisfies you.
Mm-hmm. You touch a great point, Laura, because we cannot live just by desire of making more money, because that's going to leave you empty. You have to have a higher purpose, isn't it? And you have to do what fulfills you. Because if you grow a business, even though you can sell it and then you sell it, then what? Right? How many margaritas can you drink in front of the ocean before you get bored? Especially if you're a productive, creative, high-performing entrepreneur like you, right?
Yeah. What is your true passion? Where is it? And recognizing that for yourself. And it doesn't mean that your organization can't do other things, but what is it that you're doing that really gives you that passion? And just, you know, spending that time getting to know yourself, And I've been fortunate over the years that I've always signed on to the woo-woo. And so I've spent the time learning about who I am and what makes me happy and what I'm meant to be doing on this earth plane, and working towards that.
That's beautiful. How long have you been in business?
Oh gosh, I've been in business for this business. It's been, I think, going on 30 years now.
Oh my God, but you look like you're 29, 30 years old.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do have I do have the good fortune to have a face that looks young. The rest of me doesn't feel young, but at least my face looks young.
I love the whole life purpose thing. You know, for me, having been able to put the right hooks in place in my business allows me to be more creative. I'm the visionary of the company, allows me to do this beautiful podcast. I'm into writing books now. I spend a bit more time with my wife now, which is fabulous. We don't have kids anymore. Everybody's grown and they have their own jobs and their own, their own places to live. And to be honest with you, it will be hard. Like, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't be excited to sell the company if somebody wants to buy it from me, but it will be hard for me to figure out what else to do because I love my business. I love what I do. I love solving business problems with computer science. That's what we do. We write applications to grow people's profits, right?
Well, that's an interesting thought that you bring up, David, about selling your company, because as an entrepreneur, I'm a firm believer that in safeguard, you've built this business and you have an obligation to it. And the obligation is that when somebody comes around and talks about acquisition, you have to at least give it some thoughtful consideration. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you ever have to do it, but, the universe puts things in our path for a reason. And if the same message keeps coming up several times, it's because the universe is telling you should be paying attention to this.
Right.
And so when that starts to happen, you have to at least entertain the thought. It doesn't mean you have to pull the trigger on the thought, but you have to at least entertain the thought. So you're absolutely correct. You sit here and go, oh, my business is going so well, why would I ever sell it? And then someone comes along and says, hey, I want to talk to you about maybe purchasing or merging or whatever. You have to at least take the time to listen to what's being said. Because I believe that, God, your higher self, your higher being, whatever it is that you believe in, I believe that those messages are being put in front of you for a reason.
No, that's for sure. And it's awesome because we're starting talking about faith, right? So I'm a born-again Christian, and I'm trying to just surrender everything to God and do his will. Because at the end of the day, when I try on my own, everything goes wrong. But I'm like,
right.
God, I'm yours. Your will be done, not mine. Even with business, especially with business, like I tell people, we're always one client away from being bankrupt. And I've been in business for 17 years. And I have had so many hardships and difficulties where we were facing bankruptcy at least 3 or 4 times. And all of a sudden, boom, and the next client shows up and it's a bigger client than before. And here we are making profits and growing. You must have experienced the same thing in your business in 30 years. Tell me, what has been the hardest thing that you had to go through, and how do you overcome it?
Oh, gosh. The biggest one was over 20 years ago when we fired 40% of our clients.
40% in one shot?
40% in one shot.
Why did you do that?
Because it was killing my spirit.
Wow.
So, as you can imagine, doing taxes, first of all, doing taxes, unless you have a passion for taxes, it's not a fun thing to be doing. It's not a fun thing to be spending your life on. And I came through a tax season that was absolutely grueling. And I looked at my business partner and I said, if this is all there is to it, then I don't want to do this. I've got to do something different because this was ridiculous. So we sat down and we went through the client base, and, and 80% of your money comes from 20% of your clients. And the thought is, if 20% of our clients are giving us 80% of the revenue, don't that 20% deserve our attention?
Mm-hmm.
And so we made a switch and we looked at all the clients and we looked at all the low performing clients, unprofitable, people that were not nice, people we didn't want to work with, people we didn't want to answer the phone when they called. Yeah. And we said, those all have to go. So we took all of those out. We spent more time with the A clients. And in doing that, we ended up doing a ton more work for the A clients. We ended the year with the same revenue.
With 80% less work.
Yeah.
It's fine, you know. So I went through a whole crisis, personal and business crisis in 2011. It took 2 years, from 2011 to 2013. And I was a changed man afterwards. And somebody gave me this book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Yes.
I read that book 4 times. And basically, the whole book is a practical guide on how to apply the Pareto law, the 80-20 rule that you're talking about.
Right.
And it's true. It's crazy, but it's true. And we're always checking. I live my life by that rule. That rule is like the law of gravity. You don't know why it's there, but it's there. And so that if you look at, I live in Toronto, Canada, right? If you look at all the highway systems in the province of Ontario, 20% of the highways carry 80% of the traffic. It's crazy. And sometimes it's even more, significant. Like I see sometimes it's 85-15 or even 90-10, right? Yep. So that if you live your life like that, so for example, you know what I did? I realized that when I was working from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, I was getting a lot of wasted time in my life. And since we learned the lesson about the melting ice cream and how entrepreneurs will do everything at the same time, and it looks horrible at the end. I said, you know what? I wonder what will happen if I will start my workday from noon until 6 p.m. And then use 4 hours of my day to do personal growth. So I started doing that 2 years ago. You know what happened? I started increasing my productivity. And by the way, I started taking Fridays off afterwards. So now it's from noon till 6 p.m. and Fridays is a complete free day. And I am more productive doing that than spending all this time, because when I had all this time, I was entertaining things that were not productive for the company. And this is the 80-20 rule again. It's what you do with your clients. And that gives you freedom, isn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. What happens to many entrepreneurs is they think that they have to work and work and work, and it becomes a badge of honor how many hours they've worked. So, it's like, oh, yeah, I worked 12 hours a day all this week, or I worked 10 hours a day all this week. And it actually is counterproductive to you, because by doing that, you're stifling your own creativity, number one. Number two, you're allowing the projects that you're working on to expand to the amount of time that you've given it. If you give it less time, you actually get as much done as if you give it more time. And that's one of the reasons why you and I are both in Strategic Coach. And that was one of the first things we learned, was the entrepreneurial time system and how to take better control of your time. And the fact that free days are so important to our creativity, because it gives our mind the opportunity to wander. And that wandering is where amazing solutions come out.
It's true. And we have to figure it out. Like, I mean, I wish I could get my entire company to have the same schedule as I do, but then we wouldn't do much work. So my employees still work 8 hours a day, right?
Your entire company is not trying to be entrepreneurial and be creative. The majority of your company is there to follow procedures and do a checklist, because that's the type of career they've chosen to have. And that fits for them. It doesn't fit for you as an entrepreneur. So it's also about recognizing that as an entrepreneur, others are not going to process and be the same way as we are. 90% of the world wants to have a systematized process. It's only that rare percent of us that really need the creativity. But what ends up happening is we become like the employees that want to work an 8 to 5 job and do a checklist and go home at the end of the day and not think about the work. And what happens is we still go home at the end of the day and think about the business. Mm-hmm. So you got to switch what you're doing, and you've got to recognize that what you do is different than what all of your employees do.
For sure. And one of the things that I struggle against most was my feelings about the perception I will give my employees when I started doing this.
Right.
Like, oh my God, how they're gonna feel, how they're gonna look like at me, and blah blah blah. Actually, they admire me now, and they know like I bring all the creativity, and most of the revenue is created by my influence, right?
Right.
So,
and in today's environment, you have to recognize too that employees, they just don't stay with anyone long. It's not the same thing that it was 20, 30 years ago. There is much more fluidity and movement within the employee force than there ever was in the past. And so we also have to recognize as entrepreneurs that the employees are probably not going to stay with us for very long because they don't have the same view that we had many years ago. Now, you could be a young entrepreneur coming into this and also have that a little bit more fluid environment. But, just recognizing that their goals and objectives are completely different than our goals and objectives, and accepting that and not putting blame on yourself for that, but that is the way it is. And that's how it works in this environment today.
And most people need certainty, and that's what's required, and we need people that need certainty. Very few people are like you and I, where we can take the ups and downs, we can handle life as it is, by the way, because when you are actually into a job of certainty, you have this false idea that the life is stable and there is an even keel every day, and that's not really true. The entrepreneur makes it stable for the employees, but the ups and downs are there, and they are hard to navigate. However, that's what makes me excited. Like you said, I like the ups and downs. I like to solve problems and the challenges, and also I like the upside, right? When we start making more money and we can actually grow.
Right. Or it doesn't always have to be about making more money. It's about doing the type of work that you want to do with the type of people that you want to do. If you're an employee in a company, you have to work on the type of work or the type of customers that the owner says we're going to take on. As the owner, I get to say, I don't want to work with that type of employee. I don't want to do that. I don't want to work with that type of customer. I don't want to do that type of job. And we don't have to. So those are some of the trade-offs that we make, is that we have the freedom to do that and the freedom to turn away the types of business we don't want to do. But as an employee, you have to put up with whatever it is that your company has set as the ideal employee, so as the ideal client. So that's a little bit of fun and flexibility that we get to enjoy.
And from the employee side, that's the price that you pay for stability.
Exactly.
Right? There's always a price, right?
Exactly.
It's fantastic. I could talk to you for the rest of the day. This is fabulous.
I know.
What do you recommend to somebody that might be thinking about opening up their own business? They are uneasy in their job. They have this idea. How do you inspire these people to take the first step?
Well, I think that if you recognize who you are and you spend the time with who you are and figuring out who you are, I think it just naturally comes. I've known many people, I'll give you an example. My boyfriend was in a government job for 27 years. Something happened. He was injured, forced to retire, and he was offered another government job. But at the time he said, no, I've got this side business going on, and I think it's time for me to take the plunge and just work on that full time. And now he's built it into this absolutely amazing company that, so the point was that he, even though he was in this government position, had a lot of security, a lot of benefits, and was offered another government position that didn't require the physical exertion that he couldn't do anymore after this accident. He chose to not take it because he recognized that his entrepreneurial spirit was in there and it was ready to emerge. So sometimes fate puts things in your roadblocks in your way to force you into it. Other times you can move into it gradually. So the point is, you should always be in a state of preparing. And just because you're doing a job for someone else doesn't mean you're not preparing to be an entrepreneur. That's the times when you're getting ready. It's the time to research. It's the time to understand who you are and spend the time doing that. There are a lot of programs out there that help people identify what their personality traits are. For instance, the Kolbe we talked about earlier. So if anybody hasn't taken that, that's KOLBE. And it's about your cognitive abilities. It's about the things that are just in you naturally. And then any of the other analysis tools that are out there to help you prepare. So just because you're not an entrepreneur now doesn't mean you're not getting ready to be an entrepreneur.
It's beautiful. And also the timing, amazing. Like it's never too late, right? Your boyfriend, 27 years as an employee, and now he's a successful entrepreneur. What a beautiful example that is never too late. Right.
It's never too late. It's never too late. Absolutely. Absolutely. And to his credit, he could have sat back and said, oh, I've been injured by this event, and could have felt sorry for himself, and he didn't.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So he took his injury, this big problem that he didn't ask for, in a positive way, and that was the platform for him to scale to the next level in his life. Maybe without the injury, he will still be an employee.
Well, that's true. So maybe, I do believe that, our angels come in and bring certain things into our life at certain times because our angels are telling us we need to go a different direction.
That's beautiful. I'm very worried about your time. I'm going to ask you one last question because I want to respect your time. Tell me, if you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Oh, my goodness. Stop making excuses.
Oh, that's fabulous. Stop making excuses. So true, isn't it?
Yeah, when you're using excuses, you're giving someone else the power.
Yeah. And it's the victim mentality again. We go back to the victim mentality.
Victim mentality. And right now in the United States, in this point in time, we have too much victim mentality going on. We have victim mentality going on in that people blame history for them being failures in their lives. Mm-hmm. History is not your failure. You are. Mm-hmm. You are, and only you. So what are you going to be? Are you going to be a victim, or are you going to be a successor? Are you going to succeed, or are you going to fail? Only you make that choice.
That's fantastic.
No one else makes that choice for you. So if you're living in a place of failure, it's because you're letting yourself live in a place of failure. You live in the country that gives you the most opportunities of any place in the world. There is absolutely nothing that holds you back. I came from a family of 10 that had nothing extra. I put myself through college on my own dime, absolutely no assistance from anyone else. I had to make sacrifices to do that, but I didn't let anything hold me back, and nothing is holding you back either. Step into it. Step into your courage and stop making excuses.
That's fantastic. I know that freedom has a price, but also stability and the certainty has another price. And you have to decide what price you have to pay, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Laura, thank you so much for your time. God bless you. Tell me, people would like to learn more about your consulting firm. By the way, for my audience, I am a client, so you do an amazing job preparing my taxes, and thank you so much for that. How can people find you? I know that you have certain limits, but even if people might want to do business with you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the first focus of our firm is that we're a planning firm. So if you're not into planning, you don't want to contact us because we're planners. So you can go through our website, which is www.swc, that's Stees Walker Company, swc.cpa. So look at the website. In the website, there's in the contact us section, you can access my calendar. You can schedule time with me. I'll give anybody a free initial consultation to see if we're the right mix for each other, the right match for each other. But we only take on businesses that plan. So if you're not a planner, I can refer you to a lot of other people. But if you're in need or in want of planning, we're the right people. We teach businesses how to cut their tax bill, dramatically cut their tax bill.
And we need that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because if it's your biggest expense, you better learn how to manage it best.
Of course. And there is and government has rules and regulations that allow you to do this. You just got to be smart about it and learn about the law, right?
Absolutely. And if you're a startup company, go to my website and go to the blogs. I've got a ton of free information for you there. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of the free information that's out there. We're happy to share all of that. We want to help everybody to become better entrepreneurs.
Beautiful. Laura, thank you so much. You're always welcome to come back to this podcast. It has been a pleasure to get to see you and to know you. And thank you for the wisdom that you have shared, with
Thanks, David. It was great to spend time with you.
Blessings. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Cheers.
You too.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.